All right, so I want to believe that you have downloaded this data set. So there are a lot of things we will do with this data set. We might not finish everything today, but this one is just to bring it in to break the plenty learnings or the too much learnings we've been learning. So let's make use of what we've learned so far, or a few of what we've learned. So just work on the kind of live data, purportedly so, and then see how we use some of those formulas and functions and other things we've learned to analyze a data set, right? We will be doing more of this. Can everybody hear me? Please, can you confirm? All right. So I was saying that this data set, we will use it to do few things. We will use what we've learned so far to work on this data to analyze it and get the information we need from it. We might not exhaust everything we want to do with the table or with this data set today, but anyone we can finish with, that will be fine for today. Next day, we'll continue. There are a lot of things you can get from any data set. It depends on what information you need from the data set. As I said, it depends on the type of information you want your data to give you, right? Or what your client wants you to query or get from the data. So when a data set is given like this, normally your client or your customer will give you hints of what he wants or what she wants, right? So before us here is a financial data set. I think it's a 5-year or 4 years. Let me check. All right. 5 years, 2020 to 2024. So a financial data set from oil and gas, right? Financial data sets can come from any company at all. So looking at this data, first of all, I should have dropped some of the queries or some of the things we want to get from this data for you. Nevertheless, since I did not drop it on the WhatsApp group, the first 3 things we are going to get from this data set: our income statement for the 5 years, our cash flow statement, and balance sheet from this data set. Now, this is a financial data set, right? So, assuming you are presented with this kind of data, if there are those in accounting or those who graduated from accounting, maybe banking and finance, they will understand this more. Nevertheless, it is going to be simplified so that everybody will understand what we are doing. So as I said, this is a financial data set from an oil and gas company, right? Purportedly. And you are presented, you as a data analyst are presented with this data set by maybe a client or a customer for you to get income statement, cash flow statement, or balance sheet from this. There are other insights you can get from this data, right? I will be mentioning them as we continue, if time permits today. So right now, looking at this data set, you can see that some of them have up to 4 decimal points. Some of them don't even have. Some have 3. some have 4, and so on and so forth. So now I want this my data to be uniform, right? So I can just highlight the whole data, excluding the year. All these other ones are different figures coming from finance, right? So that's why I am highlighting all of them at the same time. So it is believed that all of them here are money, right? So I don't want any of them to have more than 2 decimal points. Remember when we learned about home ribbon, this place. So I can quickly add my dollar sign to this data set. And immediately, let me do that again. So I want to change all these figures to dollars, right? I want to give it a unit, right? It could be naira, it could be dollars, it could be euro, and so on. So it could be any of the monetary units that can be used from any country, right? The moment I change it to dollar, so I can see accounting number, this accounting number format. As I said, it could be dollar, it could be euro, it could be naira, it could be any of them, any of these accounting formats here that you have here, or more. You can select any of them. So I just choose to select dollar. You can see that it has added commas to these figures, and at the end it adds 2 decimal places, right? This is to make my data uniform, okay? And if you look at some of them, you'll see them in brackets, like these ones, right? A lot of figures here in investing cash flow, right? You can see them with brackets. Why do we have those brackets? Because those values are negative, right? If you were able to glance through your table or your data set, you will see that these ones that have parentheses were negative numbers or figures, right? So that's done. I have succeeded in changing all my figures here to have accounting format of dollars, right? Now, let's talk about income statement. Those in accounting would understand this more. An income statement, of course, as the name implies, right, shows a statement of income of a particular company. Could be a business, could be an enterprise, could be a company, and so on. And some of the components of an income statement include revenue, maybe cost of goods sold, which is this. This COGS means cost of goods sold. An income statement, one of its components is also gross profit. Operating expenses is still part of it, and then net profit. These are not all, but these are the ones that we have in this data set. So for you to get an income statement for these 5 years, right, we are going to make use of a pivot table. The calculation can be done using formulas, right? But it will take time to get them. If you want us to do that, maybe in the next class we can do it. But right now we are going to be faster in getting our income statement from this data set. We are going to use a pivot table. Pivot table will make it simple and then gives us results faster. If you have not forgotten how we created pivot table, or even if you've forgotten, this is how it's done. Pivot table is in insert menu, right? And remember how we turn a table, a data set to a table. Okay, we can do that. But right here in insert menu, just put your cursor anywhere and click your pivot table here. And then we are going to use a new worksheet to do this analysis, to calculate our income statements for every year, right? So when I click that pivot table here, already by default, it is going to, the pivot table is coming in a new worksheet. So I just click OK. I believe this is not new to you. And I believe this place, pivot table fields here, is not new to you also, because we learned about them when we were working with insert menu. So for me to get the years, remember we have 5 years, right? Of course, this is my year, and I want my year to be in these rows so that it will display this way. If I put it in say colon, look at it, how it will display, right? But I want it here in my rows. So this year, you drag it into this place, into your rows. So this is going to be our income statement. Remember I told you revenue is part of income statement. It's a component in it. I don't know how accounting people call it, but I call all those things that we're going to bring in components of income statement, right? So I have brought in my years, 2020 to 2024. The next thing I will bring in is my revenue. So I will drag my revenue into values. Of course, you know that we'll do a summation. Now, from that table, from this table that you have here, from this table, what the pivot table is doing is to calculate the total of revenue for 2020. That's up to this point. Up to this point, it takes the total. It goes to the year 2021 and do the same thing, 2022 and do the same thing. And that's what you have here, right? That's for revenue. The next one is cost of goods sold, which is this COGS. So I can just click also and drag it into my values, and it will bring in the total for each of these years. So gross profit is also one of the components of income statement. You drag it in and it brings in this. You can see some of gross profit, some of cost of goods sold, some of revenue. And then I will also bring in operating expenses as one of the components of an income statement. You drag it into your values and it brings it in here. And then finally, from this table, we also have net profit. We also have a net profit here. And so it's one of the components of an income statement. So we bring it in. Now, what you have right here is the summary of the summation of revenue for each of these years, summation of cost of goods sold for each of the years, the same thing for gross profit, operating expenses, and net profit for all the years. And of course, you can see the grand total right here. So if your client needed you to get an income statement from a data set like this is what you do, right? And at the end, if you want to just create, say, a chart for this, you can do that by using a pivot chart, right? It could be any of these charts, right? It could be any of them, but we're not doing that now. Normally, it used to be something like this. All right. So the next one we are going to get from this table or this data set is the cash flow statement. One of the things that your customer or your client wanted you to do for him is to generate a cash flow statement from that data set. A cash statement is a financial report, that shows how cash moves in and out of the business, right? For a specific period of time. The cash is coming in, going out, you are buying, you are selling, and so on. You are collecting cash, you are sending out cash, and so on. So that is the flow of cash in any business, right? The components of a cash flow statement are operating cash flow, right? And then we also have interest cash flow in terms of this table. So we have investing cash flow, and then we have financing cash flow. All this shows how cash move in and out of the business, right? So all operating activities, all investing activities, and all financing activities are under cash flow statement, right? Majorly, those three are under cash flow statements. We have them also in our data set here. All right, so what you do to bring this out or to get this cash flow statement is to bring the years, of course. So what I will do, I will copy this table down. Control C and Control V. So you see that I have copied this pivot table here, and then I have copied it and pasted it here. So these components are not what make up the cash flow statement. So I will just come to my values here and drag them out. Or you can come here and check them off. Or will go off, right? You can see that it returns back to this point. So I will bring in my year as usual. The next one is my operating cash flow. So I will check for operating cash flow right here and drag it in here. You can see it here. The next thing I will get is investing cash flow, which is this. Comes in. The next one is financing cash flow, brought in right here, the way you see it. So this pivot table summarizes everything that we have in operating cash flow for different years, investing cash flow for different years. Remember, these ones that have brackets or parentheses are minus, right? Remember that cash flow is what comes in and what goes out. So this is investing. That means the money you use to invest. And then this is financing, right? So right now, I have been able to extract my cash flow statement from this data set. The next thing is the balance sheet. What I just want you to know is how you use pivot table to get summary of some of these data from your data set. Okay, so by way of definition, that we can say that a balance sheet is a financial statement, that shows a company's financial position at a specific point in time or specific period. So that's what a balance sheet does. Just showing the financial statement of a particular business or company or enterprise at a specific point in time or a specific period. That's what it does. And it has components, just like these ones have their own components. Balance sheets also have its own components. And it's mainly made up of the assets, the liabilities, and the equities. And all those ones, we have it in our data set here. So if you're a businessman, you understand what I'm saying. So now let us create a balance sheet. I've told you the components of balance sheet are assets, your liabilities, and your equity. Of course, your asset can be classified into current, maybe current assets and so on and so forth, short-term asset and so on, or maybe non-current asset. Okay, can be classified into different ones, but we are not going into that. Liabilities are debts, and obligations that the company must pay, right? And then the equity is just, the equity represents the remaining value, after you must have deducted your liabilities from your assets. Okay, so that's what equity is. So these three are components of your balance sheet. So it is not different. The way we brought these ones in is still the way we will bring those ones in. All of them are in this data set. You can see them here. These three that are here. So now, let's get our balance sheet. I can copy either this one or this one, any of them. Just copy, Control C and Control V first, and then remove, click this off. What we are bringing in here is, or are, the asset. Find where your asset is, drag it into your values, and it will show up here. Find where your liabilities is, drag it in. Your equity, drag it in. So these three now make up your balance sheet. So looking at this summary now, you can see that we have the grand total of all the assets, liabilities, and then the sum of the equity. The same thing happens in this cash flow statement, right? For every year, we have the total for any of these components, right? For these three tables. So if your client wanted you to get these components out of this data set, that is how it is done. This data set is not much. You can have data sets that run into 10,000, right? That runs, let me say 5,000 and so on. This one just stops at 250 something. It's not up to 1,000. So you can have a very big or gigantic data set in which if you want to go one by one, to calculate all these things that we've done with a pivot table, it will take you time. Ordinarily, if not that I am teaching, I'm taking it slowly. What I have done here will not take me more than 10 minutes, right? To get all this information. So it is from this information that you will write your report about this data set. We still have a lot of things to do with the data set, right? We still have a lot of things to do with this. As a matter of fact, maybe I will just, after today's class, I will paste what we are going to query out of this data set. And on your own, you may try on your own to see if you can get, from what we've been learning, if you can get some of the things that we want to get from this data set when I drop it in our WhatsApp group, right? So now I want to ask, do you have any question about this? If you have any question, you can ask.
What of someone who doesn't have an accounting background? If I see a data set, how will I know the one that will go into all the income statements and balance sheet and the rest? Because I wouldn't have a clue by just looking at that data set.
Good question. I am not an accounting person, right? So the thing is, data analysts ask a lot of questions, right? So if you are given a data set and you don't understand exactly what the person wants you to do, your place as a data analyst is for you to ask to get clarification. Do you understand? Because it is what, yes, it is what your client or your customer needs that you will do for him or her or the company. Okay? So if you are not an accounting person, there is no harm in asking, how do you get cash flow statement? And the person will say, okay, for you to get cash flow statement, this is what you will do, and this is what we need, or these are the components that make up, a cash flow statement. You write it out, you write it down, right? So once you get all this information from the person, it will be very easy for you to carry out whatever the person wants to do. You must not be an accounting or banking and finance person. As a data analyst, you will learn a lot of things as you go. You will learn a lot of, yes, other disciplines. You will learn some things, even if you are not an expert in that area, but you will learn a lot of things. So that's how it works. You work with a lot of data. I have told us before that we have in this data analytics, we have a lot of specialties, right? You can specialize in financial analysis or analytics. Do you understand? It can be business analytics and so on and so forth, a lot of them. So, but as someone who is starting, you need to we can just go through all of them, just like a general stuff, in case you have a data set that's like, that comes in that needs you to work on any of those areas. Do you understand? You can specialize in as many as. In fact, data analysts, very hard for you to see someone to say, okay, I am only doing just one thing. Do you understand? You do a lot of things, but there is also a place for specialty. So, for example, those in accounting or auditing, they would like to specialize in this kind of data that we are working on today. Is that understood?